So in meeting another person, I found the magic sweet spot is right out of emptiness, right out of stillness. So we're going to spend a lot of time there meeting other people right out of stillness. And, you know, for me, a relationship is the foundation of everything. It's like my relationship with this blanket is, I can tell you stories about this blanket. Where I got it, how long I've had it, you know, that's traveled with me. And that's just the blanket. So I really feel like as soon as we start to come into the manifest world, instantly there's a relationship. Because it's the things, you know? It's me and the things. Me and the things. But that's the foundation for every single, like, encounter we have in our lives. Not just with people, but with the things in our environment. And so I've always felt like relationship is, like several of you have said, you know, it's the perfect playground for looking internally. And specifically what I've noticed in the people that I work with, oneness is not an issue. We are one, we're always like, we're already feeling like we're one. The issue is differentiation. And who am I in relationship to you? And that's where things like projection come in. Because when I feel you so close to what I am, it's easy for me to project my separation points onto you. And that it's not about me. Like who they are is actually not about me at all in this moment or any moment. So that's the spirit which inspires what we're doing, and I have a real intimacy with that. Like that's been what I've noticed as I've been doing this over the years with people. It's a real thing. It's a real thing that you can engage with someone without feeling like it's about you. Even when they're telling you, you're doing this thing. It's you, it's you, it's you. You can have this sense of, I see you. And there's more to it than that. But so if I'm, and this is only for a certain phase of it, but I'm talking to you right now, right? I see Sarah there with her long hair and her eyes open at me, and she has earrings in, and I can see the unique qualities of Sarah, right? But as I'm seeing that, I'm feeling what's silent and still, which runs also under you, let's say. It's all metaphoric right now, right? But so what's arising out of silent and still is noticing what's arising out of silent and still.
So the silent and still takes care of the unity part.
Yeah.
Does it for us without us having to like project what unity is.
Yeah. And that's why we're holding silent and still throughout the whole retreat, so that we can have a practical experience. When we first arise out of stillness, and what that means on a practical level, there's what's calm and still, right? When we deepen into that, it's going to be like we're sitting in what's still. And then I'm going to ask us to do an exercise. So it's kind of like peeking out. But here's this calm and still, right? And now I'm doing an exercise. Blah, 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 blah. that is where you'll notice the seed of relating arise. So the exercises that we start with, that's also where you'll notice the senses start to arise. So I can't relate with Karen unless I'm sensing her. For most people. This is where we're at, right? Most people. I relate with Karen through my senses. So I see her, I touch her, I listen to her, and I can feel also emotion in relationship to her, right? I could smell you, and I could taste you. So when I'm relating with her, you know, when there is complete and utter and deep stillness, the senses aren't there. I'm sure you've experienced that, right? The senses aren't there. There's nothing to sense, and there's no one to sense in stillness. When you start to come into the world and the senses activate, that's your first level of embodiment. So, at the first level of embodiment, what's happening? Is there separation between what's calm and still, or is there unification? Because otherwise, what I'm sensing is going to be based on my separation. So when I look at Karen, I see a little bit of Karen and a little bit of my separation together, depending on where I'm at, you know. So my deep drive was, I want to see Karen. I just want to see Karen. I don't want to see me and Karen. I don't want to see any filters on top of Karen. I just want to see Karen. And in order to do that, when I look at Karen through the sense, that sense needs to be completely unified with what's calm and still. So we're going to have an exploration of the senses this afternoon. And we're going to explore relating with another person through the senses from what's calm and still. And that's going to be our whole afternoon. At the moment of looking from stillness, if you notice that stillness is usually stillness is back here and something else is up here, right? Whatever is keeping them apart is the filter. So whatever the quality of whatever is keeping them apart is what you can tell me at the time. That can be a past life, it can be a belief, it can be a preconceptual identity. Specifically, how I want to start the exercises is when I say ground into stillness, what I mean is notice where the stillness is in relationship to your body, and then go sit in it. And that's going to be the basis for our exercises. It's really, the most important thing is before we start each exercise, before you begin asking questions of person, you want to ground into stillness or emptiness, or you can find your word for it. Whatever is the calmest, silent thing, you want to find your word for it, right? You ground into that. And then you do the exercise once you feel that you're grounded in. So the exercise is, I'm sitting here with Fleur, and I ask her, what are you feeling right now? And she's going to respond to me with the basic things: physical sensation, emotion, thought.
Nope. Do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling really kind of like a solidness in my legs and my arms, and I feel a slight shakiness in the crown, the back of my back and my face, like a little nervousness. And I feel a little turning of my head, like a kinesthetic experience to the left. And the emotion, I feel really calm. There's just that nervousness in the top of my body.
And then I just say thank you. I'm not reflecting back to her. I'm not asking questions beyond that. And also the question, the point of the exercise is not the question. The point of the exercise is to create a space where the person gets to explore and share what's happening within themselves, right? So sometimes we can get to like, what are you feeling right now? And where's stillness in your body? But the point is to give space. So I ask her, she shares with me, I notice that she's finished, and I say thank you. And then the second part of the question, after how are you feeling, is where is stillness in relationship to your body right now?
My whole body feels really rooted and unchanging. The most solid is at the ground, and kind of there's a sense of emptiness containing, and the emptiness containing is also relative to the experience of sensation in the face and the crown. Stillness is throughout. Again, the nervousness is in contrast to the stillness.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things about what we're doing is the questions are not necessarily meant to provide the answer that you're looking for. The question is just provoking an inner experience, right? And so I asked Fleur, where's stillness in relationship to your body? And she gave me a whole lot of information that was kind of not just that, not just the answer to that question. That's fine. That's fine. She's still having a process of noticing the relationship between what's still and what's active, and that's what we're looking for. So, does that make sense? Do you have questions? Okay.
And then when we're done, do we flip it?
And then when you're done, you swap.
So she asks the question?
Yeah, and so what I'd like you to do is ground into stillness with each time. Before you start the exercise, and then when you swap, ground again. So the person who's asking the question is going to be feeling their physical sensation, emotion. You're feeling yourself as the other person is responding to the questions. Yeah? Okay. And I'm glad you asked that, because in the first time you posed the question, when you pose the question that way, it actually takes me back to something that I've been meaning to address or like ask. I noticed that in our group of people, there's a tendency to say, I'm noticing, or I'm experiencing. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, like, I'm very aware when I hear people say that there's an I and an experiencing. Mm-hmm. And they feel separate to me. Mm-hmm. So when you ask the question, I get that again, like, there's an I and there's an experiencer, and I'm just noticing.
Yeah, it's good to always come back to the simplicity of the recipe, in a way, because it's kind of like an anchor, and you can apply that to any exploration.
And so what I heard you kind of play with in that is, what is the role of the body in this? Like, why is it a thing? Like, why is it important? And on a basic level, what I've noticed is the one exploring is has a tendency to, that's the conscious mind, basically. And so there's like the going into the seeds of the conscious mind and what creates the conscious mind, but the body is the unconscious mind. Mm-hmm. So the body is and the physical sensations that come with the body are the gateway to the unconscious mind. And in the unification of the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, it's important to hold both. And then what Fleur said is really important too, is that you'll find that we have the elements, right? But then you are often just sitting in one of them. It's like, oh, I have 4 elements here. Why am I just sitting in one, looking at the other 3? As opposed to like being in this one and looking at those 3, you know? And there'll come a point probably where you're in the body, or there's an experience of the body looking at the conscious mind, or the one navigating it. And then that's when there's this key turning point of the sense of self gets to be transformed. Because it's like, I'm not necessarily just this navigator who's looking around. Now I'm looking at the navigator. So what's this? You know, and then there's
Question is like, give me a moving picture in all of its parts, and that's like the body. It might be outside the body, it might be thoughts that are not, you know. And then it's like when you say where's stillness in relation to your body, then it's like, oh, I have to look at my picture. Okay, where's the body, and then where's the stillness in relation to it? So it's almost like honing in on the overall landscape that you just kind of earmarked or something. And then the same thing with a sense of I.
yeah.
Is that a like?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you notice where the sense of I is in the picture.
Yep. Okay.
Perfect. That's my eyes. What are the elements doing? Where's the sense of self? Where's stillness in relationship to the body? Any other sensations?
Stillness kind of feels like it's enveloping it, like around, and I don't know, the I feels really inherent with the pain. It's just like, ow, you know? Like, it's too much, fuck, it really hurts, you know, that kind of narrative.
Yeah. Great. So as long as there are elements in separation, there will be a question arise. When those elements collapse in unification, the question will disappear. And then you can tell us the answer.
Okay.
To your question. Where are your friends in relationship to your body? Over here. Where's the house in Vermont? Over there. Where are you? I'm here. Where's stillness in relationship to all the elements? Back there. Okay, you have all your field completely ready for you. And all you need to do is keep showing up until all those elements completely unify, and then watch reality from there. If we have partners, we're merged with them a lot, you know, and that's when we get, it's beautiful, but also there can be confusion of, I'm experiencing something, but it's actually happening in my partner. You know, so what's happening there? Like, why is that happening? So the differentiation exercises help distinguish so that I can feel, oh, I'm feeling all of this stuff. That's happening in Daniel. And that gives me a completely different perspective than, this is me, it's happening in me. Because if I feel it happening in Daniel, then I have an action to take potentially, or just a noticing of where he is, or what is that? You know, like, I'm a warrior. And then everything melts away and there's just warrior. No I.
That makes for a happy archetype. Whatever.
It makes for a non-identified archetype.
It shows the true nature of something.
Yeah.
Just lets it be its nature. When the archetype's fully integrated with you, there's no archetype. But it's like embedded in what you are.
It's
So we all have access to all of the archetypes, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're in theory, you do. But if you're not open to being the archetype because you have a sense of identity that excludes the experience, then you're not going to have access to the archetype.
Gotcha.
And then if you have identity with the archetype, when you access the archetype, you'll be stuck in the archetype. It's like an initial thing that we start with. Oh, it's this formula. You feel emptiness in relationship to your body. What are the physical sensations? The formula, you know? As soon as you can get in touch, like use the formula to get in touch with your inner space takes over. And there will be times when it's helpful to have someone kind of stimulating or provoking particular insights for you to take into your inner space, but that insight will then just be like, something's moving the merry-go-round. Merry-go-round goes. And that is what ends up making what we're doing really alive and dynamic, and eventually magical. Well, what usually happens is you have a formula, right? As long as you're following the formula like the recipe, okay, now I have stillness in relationship to my body. Now there's a me. Now there's all the physical sensations. Check. That it's a good start, but once you start to hold those elements kind of continually, it will become natural and it will just fall into place. Things will fall into place and start to move and shift of their own accord. And if you're finding that the inquiry is getting stagnant and boring, you know that you're not allowing that like collapse into just letting things roll within yourself.
Well, and the thing, like my experience is that things start appearing.
Okay.
Like instead of having to ask the questions, like the next thing arises.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like learning how to just sit and allow things to arise.
Yeah.
Was a big point for me of like, still is, I think, like, yeah, just making space, like surrendering to allowing things to arise.
Yeah. I mean, in actuality, the container of the inquiry, the structure of that is masculine. And what I'm suggesting that it leads to is an experience of feminine, where there's just a flow in what's arising. Eventually they come together in proper order. If you have too much of one, then you're imbalanced, right? Because you're just flowing, but there's nobody there like, hey, what about this thing that you're missing? Because you're just like flowing around, you know? Or if you're just doing the structural inquiry, then it's like you're missing the flow. So I know the more I integrate masculine and feminine within myself, what naturally arises is part of the structure. And now this is missing. Now watch that. And now, sense of I. Emptiness. What?